Okay, just to touch back on the last point I was making in part one's video, is that both of our shortcuts have been arithmetic in that your general rule is that you start at 1 and your common difference is you do plus 1 every time. It's kind of a really strangely obvious arithmetic sequence that doesn't have a lot going on with it. And we had seen that the general formula was first term plus last term. And that gets us, like the 101 or the 11 from the first example. And remember, we always saw that from first and last term added. And then we multiply that by how many pairs there were. And pairs, you can take however many total numbers there are and cut it in half. So this is just a sum, and that's terribly written, sorry about that. Let me try that again. So sum of n terms. Notice we stop at the nth term here. Okay, and then there's a couple of practice problems for us in the notes before the practice problems that we'll do tomorrow during class. So here's a sequence. Your question is it arithmetic or not? And then if it is, can you find the sum? So why don't you try part A first, unpause when you're ready to get your answer. Okay, so your answer is yes, it is arithmetic because we have a common difference of 16 between terms. So once you figured out it's arithmetic, the question is how to find the sum. Now remember, our sum of n terms, we've got our formula up here. And generally I like to use like S for sum of n terms. And then I'll write it like this. Same thing as up above. So here's our formula. Now we have the first term. Right, our first term is over here. We have our nth term, which is over there. However, we are lacking what term number that is. So I would think about, do we have any formulas or any useful tools that could help us figure out which specific term number that is? I want you to think about it for a sec before you let me spoil it. You might be thinking at this point we have a second formula that we have at our disposal. So here's our term formula. If I set this equal to 279, I know my first term is -9, and then I've got plus n minus 1 times my common difference of 16. So from here, if I assume that 279 is a specific term, I can solve for what number term that is specifically. So we'll go ahead and do the algebraic solving for the term number. Then once you have that, I want you to plug it into your formula along with your other pieces of information that we already had. Okay, here is your final answer worked out. It turns out it was the 19th term. Plugging in the 19th term along with our first term and our last term, we have our sum at 2,565. So that concludes our arithmetic sequences and series. When you move on to the next video for our day 5 content, you're going to be learning about another type of special sequence and series called geometric. Okay? So we're going to move on to the next video. I'll see you guys then.